San Francisco, 2007. Three roommates were about to miss their rent payment. They weren't experienced businessmen. They weren't wealthy investors. They were simply trying to find a way to keep a roof over their heads. A few days later, they stumbled upon an idea that would change the way the world travels forever. The city was changing. Technology startups were appearing everywhere. Young entrepreneurs arrived with big dreams, hoping to build the next billion-dollar company. But for many of them, success was still a long way away. Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia were two of those dreamers. They shared a small apartment and hoped to build something of their own. But dreams don't pay the rent. Their savings were disappearing. The rent deadline was getting closer, and they needed a solution. Fast. Then, an opportunity appeared. A major international design conference was coming to San Francisco. Thousands of designers were expected to attend. Within days, hotel rooms across the city were completely booked. Finding a place to stay became almost impossible. That's when Brian looked around the apartment. There wasn't an extra bedroom, but there was empty floor space. Joe had recently bought 3 inflatable air mattresses. Suddenly, everything clicked. What if, instead of booking a hotel, people stay here? They could sleep on the air mattresses. It sounded strange, almost ridiculous. Why would anyone stay in a stranger's apartment? But they had nothing to lose. They built a simple website and called it Airbed and Breakfast. They weren't trying to build a billion-dollar company. They were simply trying to pay next month's rent. They had no idea that this small experiment was about to change the travel industry forever. The website was ready. Now they needed someone willing to book it. They needed their first guests. They waited. Hours passed. Then, someone booked. Then another. And another. Their guests weren't looking for luxury. They simply needed a place to stay. Something unexpected happened. They didn't just provide a bed. They created an experience. Visitors left with more than a place to sleep. They left with a story. For Brian and Joe, it proved something important. People were willing to stay in a stranger's home. The experiment had worked, but building a real company would prove far more difficult. Now, they had to convince investors, and almost everyone said no. The idea had worked, but one successful weekend wasn't enough to build a company. Airbnb needed money. So Brian and Joe started meeting investors. They explained their idea. People could stay in strangers' homes. Most investors weren't impressed. Again and again, they heard the same answer. No. Money was running out. Once again, they faced the same problem. Survival. Then, another unusual idea appeared. During the 2008 U.S. presidential election, they designed collectible cereal boxes. They sold them, one box at a time. Not because they wanted to sell cereal, but because they needed money. It sounded ridiculous, but it worked. That determination caught someone's attention. A startup accelerator called Y Combinator. Everything was finally about to change. Airbnb had survived. Now, it had to convince the rest of the world. Joining Y Combinator changed everything. Airbnb finally had experienced mentors and a clear direction. They improved the website. They listened to customers. And they kept making the experience better. More hosts joined. More travelers booked. And slowly, Airbnb began to grow. Trust became Airbnb's greatest challenge and its greatest advantage. Reviews helped strangers trust each other. Every successful stay encouraged another. The more hosts joined, the more valuable Airbnb became. More homes attracted more travelers. More travelers attracted more hosts. Economists call this a network effect. Every new user made Airbnb more useful for everyone else. Within a few years, Airbnb had expanded far beyond San Francisco. But just when everything seemed unstoppable, the world suddenly stopped traveling. The pandemic nearly destroyed Airbnb, and once again, its survival was in doubt. In the beginning of 2020, the world stopped traveling. Flights were canceled, borders closed, vacations disappeared almost overnight. Airbnb's business collapsed, bookings disappeared, thousands of hosts lost their guests. Many believed Airbnb wouldn't survive, but once again, the company adapted. As travel returned, so did Airbnb, stronger than before. Every successful company begins with an idea, but lasting companies become much more than an idea. Airbnb didn't succeed because it owned homes. It succeeded because it connected people. Products can be copied. Features can be copied. Even technology can be copied. But trust, built over years, between millions of hosts and millions of travelers, is far more difficult to recreate. And perhaps that's Airbnb's greatest achievement. It didn't just change where people stay. It changed how the world travels. And that is how three roommates who couldn't afford the rent built one of the world's biggest travel companies. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, consider subscribing for more stories behind the world's greatest businesses.